the northern realm, a chilling scene unfolded as a vast swarm of undead creatures launched a relentless assault on a human outpost. Driven by a dark and inexorable will, these undead were not mere shambling corpses, but a formidable army raised and commanded by the necromancer, Stephen Lestat. His creation, a bone fortress equipped with the latest advancements in gene manipulation and biological science, stood as a testament to his commitment to winning the divine game for Necros. The human outpost, positioned strategically at the edge of the northern realm, was initially capable of holding its own against smaller skirmishes. However, faced with the overwhelming numbers of the undead, their defenses began to falter. The undead, enhanced through unique gene therapy that fortified their rotting bodies and endowed them with unnatural endurance, surged forward in waves of decaying flesh and bone. Stephen Lestat's enhancements allowed the undead to withstand and adapt to the lethal combat techniques employed by the other factions. The Lycans, known for their superior strength, agility, and ferocity, posed a significant threat with their ability to tear through the undead ranks in close combat. Meanwhile, the Elders, masters of shadow manipulation, had demonstrated their ability to annihilate large numbers of the undead from a distance, using the dark arts to sap the life force from their foes. Undeterred, Lestat worked tirelessly in his fortress, his mind a whirlwind of scientific and necromantic knowledge. He pledged to devise a strategy that would not only counter the physical prowess of the Lycans, but also neutralize the mystical threats posed by the Elders. His research focused on further enhancing the physiological traits of his undead, increasing their resilience against physical attacks, and developing resistance to magical energies. As the outpost's final defenses crumbled, the undead army swelled with newly claimed souls, each fallen defender rising again to join the ranks of Necros's army. This macabre reinforcement strategy was gruesome yet effective, ensuring that with every battle, regardless of the initial outcome, the undead army grew ever larger and more formidable. The fall of the human outpost marked a grim beginning to the unfolding saga in the Northern Realm, signaling a new era of darkness as Stephen Lestat's undead horde prepared to march forth, a growing threat not just to the Lycans and the Elders, but to all who dared stand in their way in this God-ordained game. As night descended, blanketing the sky in a shroud of impenetrable darkness, the small village to the south succumbed to a deep, unsuspecting sleep. Having spent their day toiling in the fields, bartering goods, and fortifying their modest homes, townsfolk settled into their beds, their exhaustion earning them a profound, yet tragically vulnerable, rest. Unknown to the slumbering villagers, shadows began to gather with sinister intent, swirling around the edges of the town like dark spectres at a somber feast. These shadows, silent and formless, slipped through open windows and under door cracks, invading the homes that housed the unsuspecting. Once inside, the dark forms transformed. From the nebulous mist emerged decrepit figures, old, parasitic, and sickly. They were like creatures resurrected from the tomb and the grave, their appearances ghastly, and their intentions malevolent. These were the Elders, ancient beings, with a thirst not just for blood, but for the very essence of life. As the village lay in helpless slumber, the Elders began their grim banquet. They moved from bed to bed, their forms hunched and grotesque, gorging on the townsfolk. With each life taken, the air grew colder, the shadows deeper. The Elders' ancient magic, dark and ruthless, ensured that those who perished did not rest in peace, but rose again, their eyes hollow, their loyalty forcibly bound to their new sinister lineage. By dawn, the village had transformed completely. Where once there was laughter and life, now stood only the silent ranks of newly turned Elders, their faces pale and haunted under the waning moon. Elder, the leader of this macabre legion, watched over the scene with a grim satisfaction. His smile was a twisted curl of his lips, a confident arrogance born from unwavering loyalty to his god. To him, this was not merely a victory, but a necessary step towards dominance in the divine game set by the gods. This dark conquest, under the cover of night, not only bolstered the strength of the elders, but also served as a chilling reminder of their reach and the merciless nature of their campaign to win the ultimate power for their god. To the east, nestled amidst a burgeoning forest, stood a small, scientific outpost, a beacon of human ingenuity and determination. Here, dedicated researchers worked tirelessly, advancing industries in science and technology to ensure their community could not only survive, but thrive in this harsh, supernatural-laden world. The day had been like any other, filled with the hum of machinery and the clatter of keyboards, until a deep, terrifying howl shattered the calm. It was primal, ancient, a sound that spoke of wildness and untamed fury. Instantly, the alarm blared throughout the outpost, a piercing siren that set every heart pounding with dread. The inhabitants scrambled, gathering essential belongings as they prepared to flee. Among them, a solitary figure in a chrome mask, recently arrived from afar, moved with an eerie calmness. He entered the science lab, his voice resolute as he issued a stark warning. Leave now, or be torn to shreds by the lichens. Outside, the chaos was palpable as the lichens descended upon the outpost with terrifying speed and ferocity. Their eyes glowed with a predatory light as they leapt over barriers and burst through doors. The humans' desperate sprint for safety was futile. The werewolves were simply too swift, too relentless. Screams filled the air, mingled with the snarls and growls of the lichens attacking. The terror of facing these beasts was unlike any other. Muscles rippling under moonlit fur, fangs bared in savage delight. One by one, the outpost defenders fell, only to rise again, their bodies undergoing a horrific transformation. The ancient curse of lycanthropy took hold, weaving its dark magic through their veins, reshaping them into the very monsters they feared. Inside the lab, as chaos reigned outside, the man in the chrome mask sat alone, an aura of inevitability about him. When the alpha lichen burst through the door, its eyes alight with a brutal intent, it lunged. But in a moment laden with inexplicable recognition, the man removed his mask, revealing his face. Something deep within the alpha stirred, a recognition, or perhaps a command from a past long buried. It stopped mid-attack, its fierce momentum halted as if by an invisible force. With a huge commanding roar, it signaled the other lichens. The message was clear and filled with an authority that brooked no dissent. Leave this place and never return. The other lichens retreated, disappearing into the forest as swiftly as they had arrived. The man in the chrome mask calmly replaced his mask and spoke into the lingering silence, his voice resonating with a new, undisputed command. From now on, this place will be known as Outpost Winter. This declaration marked the outpost not just as a site of scientific endeavor, but as a domain under the protection of a man whose very presence could sway the instincts of the primal and the supernatural. In the newly christened Outpost Winter, Simon Winter had indeed chosen his location with precision. The laboratory, fortified and secluded, was laden with equipment and resources essential for his monumental task. Here, he intended to recreate his weapon, a device perhaps capable of turning the tides in the supernatural struggle enveloping this world. Meanwhile, far to the west, in a bustling human stronghold, life thrived under the vigilant leadership of Commander Lewis and Eleanor. This stronghold, a fortified beacon of human resilience and ingenuity, bustled with activity. Its walls, reinforced with salvage technology and ancient craftsmanship, housed a community determined to survive against all odds. Within this community, Captain Harris and Captain Knox found themselves working closely together. Both were skilled leaders, adept in tactical defense and community organization, yet neither held any recollection of past conflicts or battles. To them, their life within the stronghold's walls was all they had ever known, and their dedication to its people was unwavering. As reports of attacks by supernatural factions began filtering in, the atmosphere within the stronghold grew tense. Scouts and messengers brought news of encroaching dangers, undead hordes pushing from the north, and shadowy figures haunting the southern borders. Each report solidified the need for vigilance and preparedness, traits that both Harris and Knox exemplified in their daily duties. Commander Lewis, a seasoned leader with a strategic mind, worked alongside Elena, whose strength and charisma rallied the stronghold's inhabitants. Together, they orchestrated defenses and planned counter-strategies, yet like Harris and Knox, their memories were curiously confined to their lives within the stronghold. The past, with its potential insights into enemies and alliances, remained veiled in mystery, leaving them to rely solely on the present challenges and the immediate need to protect their home. Their shared lack of historical context did not hinder their leadership. Rather, it instilled a pure focus on survival and prosperity under the current circumstances. This peculiar amnesia, whether a consequence of the gods' manipulation in this crafted realm or a side effect of their divine game, meant that each leader approached the supernatural threats with a fresh perspective, unburdened by the history of betrayals or alliances that might have shaped their strategies differently. As the stronghold fortified its defenses, the leaders remained vigilant, their lives intertwined with the fate of their community, standing as the last bastion of human resilience in a world dominated by ancient curses and celestial games. In a strategically pivotal yet unassuming location at the heart of the map, a small outpost buzzed with activity under the watchful eyes of Alex and Marco. Despite their mysterious amnesia concerning anything prior to this alternate reality, the pair operated with the seamless coordination of long-standing teammates. Their primary focus was on bolstering defenses and devising robust strategies to safeguard their small community against any potential threats. Nina, the camp leader, dedicated herself tirelessly to managing the camp's daily operations and meeting the needs of its inhabitants. Her leadership was a beacon of stability, guiding the camp through uncertain times. Unbeknownst to them, their outpost sat at the very center of the map, making it an unwitting focal point for all three supernatural factions. Meanwhile, in the dark and imposing castle of the Elders, Elder and Sarana engaged in a strategic dialogue. Their voices echoed through the cold stone halls, carrying plans of manipulation and survival. We must not engage the Lycan directly. Their unique abilities are the deadliest to us. Elder cautioned with a grave tone, the weight of their predicament clear in his expression. Sarana nodded in agreement, her mind racing with tactics. There is a human camp, yet untouched, positioned between the two factions. We need to lead them both there, she proposed, her voice a whisper of intrigue and urgency. Elder contemplated, then added, "If we attack this camp and cause a commotion, hopefully they will come to claim it for themselves. It could serve as bait to draw both the Lycan and the undead into conflict." "We have no silver," Sarana interjected, a note of caution in her voice. "And no doubt, These Lycan are true blood, lethal to us. We must have them fight the undead first, and try to stop them both from bolstering their numbers." Eldur nodded, his eyes narrowing as he devised the next phase of their plan. "Yes, while they fight, we need to be the ones recruiting to our kin. The undead are walking shells devoid of real brains, and the Lycan are mere wild animals. We, on the other hand, are superior intellectually," he asserted confidently. With a strategic grin, Eldur gave a subtle nod, a non-verbal command that set their cunning plan into motion. This maneuver was designed not just to survive, but to provoke a conflict that would ideally weaken their adversaries, allowing the Elders to capitalize on the chaos and recruit more to their ranks. The stakes were high, and in the game of gods and monsters, the Elders were playing a dangerous but potentially rewarding hand. Back at Outpost Winter, Simon Winter was on the verge of completing his most ambitious project yet, a weapon of his own design, uniquely intertwined with his superior intellect. As he made the final adjustments to the device, his thoughts drifted to its origins and the circumstances that surrounded its necessity. He had possessed this weapon before the collapse of reality, a testament to his genius that not even the gods could replicate in this new world they had crafted. The weapon, an intricate device capable of manipulating electromagnetic brainwaves and functions, was linked directly to Winter's ever-evolving intellect. By tests on himself initially, Winter had managed to increase his brain usage from the typical 10% to an astonishing 30%, and still climbing. This enhanced cerebral capacity not only amplified his intellectual abilities, but also allowed him to retain and recall experiences from before the reality collapse, providing him with insights and memories that others had lost. Working tirelessly in his lab, Winter made a crucial adjustment to the weapon. This modification was subtle, yet significant, tailored to a specific phase of the plan he was formulating, a strategy so complex and intricate that only a mind as advanced as his could conceive and hope to execute it successfully. Winter's plan, shrouded in secrecy, was designed not merely to participate in the supernatural conflicts, but to pivot the balance of power entirely. With his weapon nearly complete, he was poised to step into the fray, not just as a participant, but as a formidable architect of the new reality's future. His actions, driven by a mix of personal motives and the broader aim of human preservation, were about to introduce a new element to the divine game, one that could potentially alter the course of this supernatural war. In a strategic ploy to incite conflict between the Lycans and the undead, Serana led a team of elders on a covert assault on a crucial outpost situated between the two enemy strongholds. Employing their mastery of shadow manipulation, they deliberately chose paths that would alert their adversaries, moving through territories where the Lycans could sense their dark energy and where the undead could glimpse their shadowy forms. The intent was clear: provoke both factions into converging upon the outpost, thereby weakening them in the ensuing conflict. Reacting to the Elder's movements, the Necromancer swiftly commanded a legion of his most recently enhanced undead, designed with a higher resistance to the shadow powers of the Elders, to march on the outpost and repel the vampire-led assault. Simultaneously, the Alpha Lycan, sensing the corrupt presence of the Elders, unleashed a ferocious howl, rallying a pack of true-blood Lycans to charge towards the impending battle. The outpost, managed by a woman named Rebecca, was suddenly under siege. Shadowy figures flickered at the periphery, the ground trembled under the march of undead legions, and the air was rent by the chilling howls of Lycans. Faced with the imminent collision of three supernatural forces, Rebecca issued orders for her guards to hold their positions, yet remained prepared for a swift evacuation if necessary. As the undead forces came into view, the elders executed their final part of the plan. They retreated, leaving the Lycans and undead to clash ferociously over the outpost. This retreat was not a sign of defeat, but a strategic withdrawal to redirect their focus toward a smaller, yet intriguingly significant target, an unclaimed outpost still operational and rumoured to hold valuable scientific assets. 2 elders slipped into this smaller outpost, using their shadow forms to remain unseen. However, as they entered the main building, they were suddenly trapped by a strange, encompassing light. Simon Winter, revealing himself, addressed the court elders with a mix of disappointment and scientific curiosity. "Clumsy and late," Winter remarked coolly. "I will need to experiment on you. I'm afraid I'm going to need your heads." As one of the elders attempted a desperate escape, the light intensified, searing him with pain as he recoiled back into the room. "Don't bother," Winter continued, his voice calm and factual. "That light is a mix of ultraviolet and infrared, set to the exact spectrum as sunlight, all part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Simple really, though I doubt your insect-like intellect would understand." This encounter starkly highlighted the disparity in intellectual prowess between Winter and the elders. Despite their heightened intellect and centuries of accumulated knowledge, they were fundamentally outmatched by Winter's superior cognitive abilities, which continued to expand exponentially. His preparation and strategic use of technology not only neutralized the physical threat of the elders, but also positioned him as a formidable player in the ongoing supernatural game, one step ahead in crafting the future of this reality. The battle at the outpost was a spectacle of primal fury and undead resilience, as the Lycans, led by their instinctual ferocity, clashed with the undead, each enhanced with the necromancer's dark genetic alterations. The air was filled with the clash of bone against flesh and the snarls of wolves. The undead, though not possessing the wild agility or the raw physical power of the Lycans, were formidable due to their sheer numbers and the unnatural enhancements that granted them increased resistance and strength. They moved with a disturbing, eerie coordination, their eyes devoid of life yet burning with a relentless drive to destroy. Each undead soldier was a product of the necromancer's intricate knowledge of death and decay, crafted to be a tough opponent against the natural prowess of the Lycans. However, the Lycans' superior might eventually turn the tide. Their movements were swift and brutal, leaping, tearing and rending with their enhanced claws and teeth. The battle was a blur of motion, with the Lycans weaving through the ranks of undead, each strike calculated to be lethal. Their howls pierced the night, a chilling soundtrack to the carnage unfolding. In the ferocious melee, the Lycans demonstrated their dominance, their pack mentality, ensuring they fought with a unity and savagery that overwhelmed their foes. For every Lycan that fell, scores of undead were torn apart, their reanimated bodies unable to regenerate fast enough to withstand the onslaught. Meanwhile, the human inhabitants of the outpost, led by Rebecca, faced a dire situation. With the battle raging fiercely around them and casualties mounting, Rebecca made the hard decision to evacuate. Her voice was firm as she rallied a handful of survivors. "We need to retreat to the nearest safe place." The urgency of the situation was palpable, the danger imminent, and her leadership critical in steering her group away from the battlefield. As they fled, the tragic reality of their situation became evident. Some of the outpost defenders, humans who had fought bravely against the encroaching enemies, had fallen during the battle. Now, under the eerie glow of the moon, the curse of the Lycans began to take hold on them. Those who had been bitten and left for dead rose again, their features contorting in agony as the transformation gripped their bodies. The curse spread through their veins like wildfire, reshaping them into the very beasts they had just been fighting against. The air was thick with despair and transformation as Rebecca and her surviving group made their escape, the sounds of the ongoing battle fading into the distance, replaced by the heavy, ragged breaths of those desperate to survive another night in this brutal, supernatural realm after the ferocious battle. The outpost was nothing more than a smouldering ruin, the ground strewn with the twisted and broken bodies of the undead. Amidst the devastation, a solitary figure roamed, his gaze cold and calculating as he surveyed the aftermath of the conflict. The necromancer, undeterred by the loss, muttered with a tone of irritation mixed with anticipation. Annoying, but expected. At his command, 2 large undead servants lumbered into the area, pushing a cart that spilled a greenish goo across the blood-soaked earth. This substance, a concoction born from the necromancer's relentless genetic and biological experiments, seeped into the remains of the fallen undead. Almost immediately, the dead began to shake and convulse violently. Some bodies grotesquely bonded together, forming larger, more formidable creatures, while others rose anew, ready to fight again. The necromancer watched with grim satisfaction, proclaiming, "You can't kill the dead. We shall have to find a way to strengthen you against these mongrels." Meanwhile, back at Outpost Winter, the atmosphere was starkly different. 2 severed heads lay on Simon Winter's experimental table, subjects of his latest scientific inquiry. "Of course," Winter mused aloud, his voice echoing slightly in the sterile lab. "It's not magic or darkness, it's just science. I can see how your brains are able to convert your molecular structure into shadows." He was close to a breakthrough, one that could potentially alter the dynamics of power among the supernatural factions. "I will just need to add this to my calculations, and I will be ready," he declared, his confidence in his intellectual prowess evident. Back at the Elder's dark castle, Elder and Serana discussed the fate of their missing comrades with growing concern. "They should be back by now, unless they were attacked," Serana noted, her voice tinged with unease. Elder, his expression grave, responded, "Something about that place. Something is not right. We shall have to keep a close eye on it." The disappearance of their scouts at a seemingly insignificant scientific outpost hinted at a greater threat than they had anticipated. End of episode 1. As the shadows lengthen and the first episode draws to a close, the stage is set for deeper intrigues and conflicts. The necromancer's undead army is evolving, becoming ever more formidable through grotesque rebirths. Simon Winter, with his cutting-edge scientific methods, edges closer to unlocking secrets that could shift the very foundations of supernatural power. Meanwhile, Elder and Serana sense an ominous disturbance tied to Outpost Winter, a place that might hold more significance than any had guessed. As the factions regroup and rearm, the question looms: what new alliances and betrayals will emerge as each leader seeks to assert their dominance in this fractured realm? Episode 2 promises a continuation of this intricate dance of power, where science and the supernatural collide with unpredictable consequences. The game is far from over, and the real battle may have just begun. Crimson Dawn Season 3, Part 2, Shadows and Schemes. Elder and Serana crouched in the shadows near the perimeter of the scientific outpost, their forms barely distinguishable from the dusk that enveloped the area. The outpost, a hub of bustling activity by day, now stood eerily silent under the cover of night. "This is the place," Serana whispered, her voice laced with unease. "It was here that our brothers, Lucian and Marius, vanished. They never returned, and no word or whisper has betrayed their fate." Elder's eyes narrowed as he scanned the outpost. "Then we'll hide and observe. Patience may unveil more than direct confrontation ever could." They watched in tense silence until a figure emerged from the main building. The man paused momentarily, an inexplicable pause that seemed like a silent acknowledgement of their presence, though he made no overt sign of having detected them. Then he simply continued on his way. Eldur and Serana exchanged a look, fear momentarily flickering across their faces. "How is he here?" Eldur murmured, his voice barely a breath. "This changes everything. He's the one player that could end us all. We need to tread with caution." Later, back at their dark castle, the ancient stone walls of the council chamber echoed with the tense deliberations of the two elders. Eldur paced before the grand fireplace, his mind racing with strategy. "The Lycans can overpower us. The undead can outnumber us. And now this man, whose intellect dwarfs even ours, poses a new threat," he said, his voice grim with the weight of their predicament. Serana nodded in agreement, her own thoughts dark with concern. "We need to play smart." Eldur stopped pacing and faced her, an idea forming that seemed almost radical. "The one player they are all overlooking is the humans. I believe, with help, they could become strong enough to defeat either side. If we make an alliance, if we help them, they could serve well to help us win this war." "Side with the main course?" Serana scoffed, her eyebrows arching in disbelief. "This is preposterous." "Only until they have served their purpose," Eldur countered smoothly. "Then we will destroy them from the inside. Our brothers, Sage and Valrek, once worked with the humans. We can mention this to gain favor." A slow, calculating smile spread across Serana's face. "I like the way you think, Eldur." Together, they began to craft a delicate web of alliances and betrayals. Their plan was daring, fraught with peril, but it might just tip the scales in their favor. By using the humans, they aimed not only to bolster their ranks, but also to create a buffer against their more powerful enemies. The game was evolving, and with it, so were its players. In the secluded calm of his laboratory, Simon Winter was engrossed in his work, adjusting the settings on an enhanced monitor, a relic left by the outpost's previous occupants, but now years ahead of its time due to his modifications. As he stared intently at the screen, a triumphant smile briefly crossed his face. "There you are," he murmured, as the monitor displayed a hidden part of the realm, invisible to all but his enhanced tools. Meanwhile, far to the west, in the bustling human stronghold, the air was tense with reports of encroaching danger. Captain Harris and Captain Knox stood before the stronghold's leaders, Commander Lewis and Eleanor, delivering their findings. "The reports are correct. The undead are on the move from the north. There's new activity at the castle to the south, and Lycans have been spotted in the east," reported Captain Harris. "We must improve defenses and prepare for the worst," added Captain Knox, her voice firm with resolve, as the key players of the human stronghold engaged in strategic planning. An unexpected interruption came, and laughter echoing from the shadows. The assembled group turned sharply as Eldur, emerging into the dim light, announced, "Do not fear. I am Eldur. the leader of that castle you speak of." Beside him, Serana stepped forward, adding, "We come in peace. We are a peaceful species, yet we too fear for our safety from the undead and lichens." Eldur continued, his voice carrying a hint of historical weight. "Long ago, our greatest leader, the Sage, made an agreement with your kind to work together for a common good. I was hoping that we too could help each other." Captain Harris, ever skeptical, folded his arms across his chest. "How do we know we can trust you?" Eldur's response was immediate and pointed. "We have the power to destroy you in mere seconds. Had that been our intention, you would already be dead by now. Our greatest mind, the Sage, once trusted your people with his very existence. I would also put my trust in you." Serana chimed in, her tone earnest. "We can stop the undead, but we cannot fight the Lycan alone. However, we can show you how to defeat them." The members of the human stronghold paused, contemplating this unexpected proposal. It was Eleanor who finally spoke, her voice reflecting both her caution and curiosity. "I think this can work. What point would they have to work with us when they could simply kill us right now?" Captain Knox, however, voiced the lingering doubt that hung over them. "And when it's over, how do we know you won't just use us to aid you, then turn on us?" Eldur met her gaze, his expression solemn. "Trust, just as our ancestors trusted yours. You have my word." The promise hung in the air, heavy with the weight of centuries and the uncertainty of the future. As alliances formed in the shadow of impending conflicts, each leader knew the stakes were higher than ever. The game of survival had deepened, intertwining their fates with promises that could either save them or doom them all. Beyond the eyes of the human camp and the unsuspecting elders, a different shadow moved with purpose through the night. This entity, cloaked in darkness, crossed the landscape with supernatural speed, its form barely discernible as it streaked across the realm. Within moments, it arrived at its destination, the Lycan's woodland fortress, a vast network of dwellings high in the towering treetops. In the heart of this primal stronghold, among nearly 20 Lycans, including the formidable Alpha, the shadow halted. Emerging from the darkness was Winter, his presence causing a sudden stillness to fall over the Lycans. With a simple wave of his hand, every Lycan froze, rooted to the spot, all except the Alpha. Winter removed his mask, revealing a familiar face to the Alpha. "Hello, old friend," he greeted calmly. "Don't worry, none of them can see us." His voice was a quiet murmur against the backdrop of the dense forest. The Alpha, driven by instinct, lunged at Winter, pinning him to the ground with a ferocious snarl. No, you can't wrestle now," Winter said, his voice steady as he gently stroked the Alpha's head. The touch seemed to calm the beast momentarily as Winter continued. "The Elders are creating a ruse for the humans. They intend to build weapons to be able to combat and defeat you. Once they have done this, the Elders plan to turn on the humans and win the game." The Alpha, towering and imposing, looked down at Winter with a mix of curiosity and restrained aggression. "There will be no prize for them when the time comes, but I also can't have them destroying you," Winter continued, maintaining eye contact with the massive creature that could easily tear him apart. Despite the Alpha's primal rage, there was a clear bond that halted its deadly instincts, a bond forged from years of guidance and nurturing by Winter himself. "The time is not yet right for me to aid you in combat directly. I cannot draw that attention just yet," Winter explained, his mind working rapidly to formulate a plan. "But here's what we can do," he whispered, outlining a strategy that only he and the Alpha would know. The Alpha, recognizing its mentor and father figure, the man who saved and raised him, listened intently, although the primal rage within it screamed to act. Something deeper, an implanted sense of connection and trust, held it back. Meanwhile, at the human stronghold, Elder and Serana were busy demonstrating their purported goodwill. Serana gathered a small group of human leaders, sharing insights into the supernatural tactics that could be employed against the Lycans. "We have methods to trap the Lycans that do not require silver," Serana explained. She revealed a technique that utilized a power she shared, an ancient and mystical energy that could bind or immobilize the Lycans without the traditional weaknesses they were known for. This energy, when harnessed correctly, can create a barrier that Lycans cannot cross. Think of it as a fence, but one made of energy, invisible yet impenetrable to them, she detailed, sketching diagrams in the air with her hands that glowed with a faint, ethereal light. The humans listened, intrigued by this new possibility. Eleanor, particularly thoughtful, considered the implications. "This could change our defenses significantly," she mused aloud, weighing the strategic advantage against the potential dependence on the Elder's goodwill. As Winter outlined his strategy to the Alpha back in the woodland fortress, the Alpha nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of their situation. They were playing a high-stakes game, one that required finesse and cunning, and for now, Winter's plan was their best chance at survival. The chapter closes on a world teetering on the brink of war, with alliances and strategies forming in the shadows. Each faction, driven by their own agendas and survival instincts, prepares for what might come next, unaware of how closely intertwined their fates are becoming. Inside the human stronghold, as Serana shared the mechanics of the energy traps with the military leaders, Captain Harris raised a pointed question that hung heavily in the air. "If you can use these energy traps, why do you need us?" Serana's smile was thin, masking the complexity of their situation. "These true-blood Lycans are a counter to our powers. We weaken near them. Their primal ferocity seems to lower our defenses. By sharing this power with you and working together, we may have a chance. Years ago, we shared this same magic with your kind, whom you now call sorcerers." Captain Knox, ever practical and direct, interjected. "Will these traps work against the undead?" "No, they will just walk through them," Serana admitted, her tone turning serious. "But our shadow power can fell the undead. We can protect you." She continued to instruct the Stronghold's members on the trap incantation, a complex series of gestures and ancient words that seemed to thrum with power. Meanwhile, in the bleak expanse of the Necromancer's bone fortress, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of dark magic and decay. The Necromancer himself worked tirelessly on gene and biological experiments designed to counteract the shadow power of the Elders and bolster resilience against the Lycan onslaught. Experimenting on a lone undead, he severed one of its arms. The creature, with unsettling calm, picked up its severed limb and reattached it seamlessly. A satisfied grin spread across the Necromancer's face. "Excellent. We are almost invincible, unkillable, but we need more," he murmured, his gaze turning toward the endless rows of undead awaiting his command. He motioned to an undead guard. "Send out a unit. Attack any outposts or human towns. We need more warriors." His voice was a command that brooked no argument, and the guard bowed deeply before shuffling away to execute the order. Back at the human stronghold, as Serana finished her demonstration, the room was filled with a mix of awe and unease. The leaders were beginning to understand the precariousness of their position, aligned with the Elders out of necessity, but surrounded by threats that could obliterate their existence at any moment. Captain Harris looked around at his fellow leaders, his expression one of grim determination. "We need to prepare," he stated firmly. Not just to use these traps, but to defend ourselves from all sides. This alliance, it's a temporary reprieve at best." Elena nodded in agreement, her eyes hard with the resolve that marked her as a leader. "We'll use what we can from this alliance, but let's not forget, we need to be ready to stand on our own the moment this truce fractures." The chapter closed with the stronghold bustling into activity, each member now acutely aware of the fragile line they walked between survival and destruction. As they prepared, the distant sounds of the necromancer's minions stirring spoke of the looming threat that could come calling at any moment. In the quiet seclusion of the Lycan's woodland fortress, a poignant scene unfolded between Winter and the Alpha. "I need to leave," Winter announced, his tone carrying an uncharacteristic solemnity that filled the air with a subtle tension. The Alpha, a creature of immense power and primal instincts, paused, its ferocious demeanor softening momentarily as it looked at Winter. The depth in its eyes betrayed a rare glimpse of sadness at the prospect of his departure. "Do not worry, old friend," Winter reassured, stepping closer to the massive beast. "I am safe, and I will not allow any harm to come to you." His voice was steady, imbued with a confidence that seemed to calm the Alpha. But before leaving, Winter closed the distance between them with a sudden leap, engaging the Alpha in a playful wrestle. The Alpha, easily capable of tearing Winter apart in mere seconds, instead found joy in the play fighting, a stark contrast to its usual lethal prowess. As they tussled, Winter chuckled, breaking free from the Alpha's gentle hold. "That felt good," he said, breathing heavily from the exertion, a remembrance of a time when joy and happiness were a constant. "Right now, you are my only connection to that." With those heartfelt words, Winter stepped back, a somber smile on his face. He then disappeared into the shadows, utilizing a power he had taken from the Elders, leaving behind a silent echo of his departure. The other Lycans, previously frozen by Winter's command, continued their routines as if nothing significant had occurred. The Alpha, however, felt a twinge of sadness as it watched Winter vanish. This emotion was quickly supplanted by a surge of primal rage, a reminder of the responsibilities that lay ahead. Empowered by Winter's intervention and the strategic insights he had provided, the Alpha now had a plan to counter the Elders' schemes. Winter's brief return had not only reinforced their bond, but had also given the Alpha the tools needed to protect its pack from the looming threats orchestrated by the Elders. As the chapter closed, the Alpha stood atop the highest platform of the fortress, overlooking the dense forest that was both its domain and its charge. The weight of leadership was heavy on its shoulders, but armed with new knowledge and a renewed determination, it was ready to lead its pack, not just to survive, but to prevail. Rebecca, weary and distraught, arrived at the central outpost with a small group of survivors. The outpost leaders, Nina, Alex, and Marco, gathered around to hear the grim news. "We were attacked from all sides. Lycans, undead, and shadows. We stood no chance," she reported, her voice thick with defeat. Alex, alarmed by the implications, quickly interrupted. "Then these creatures could be upon us in days." Nina and Marco exchanged worried glances, with Marco voicing the fear that lingered in the air. "How do we even stop them? Do we even have a chance?" "We must have hope. We cannot give in," Nina responded firmly, trying to instill some courage among the disheartened group. Alex, still struggling with the reality of their situation, expressed his confusion. "We have no idea how to defeat these creatures. Why have we not seen or heard of them before? I thought they only existed in stories." As the group absorbed the gravity of their predicament, A strange sensation suddenly washed over the inhabitants of the outpost. Alex looked at Marco and Nina, a flicker of realization crossing his face. "We have done this before," he said slowly, as fragments of memories began to resurface. "Yes," Marco agreed, his own memories aligning. "We came to your camp, but it was not like this." "What is happening? I can remember everything from before," Rebecca exclaimed, her voice a mixture of confusion and awe. "It's like someone just reinstalled our memories from before," Alex mused, trying to make sense of the sudden influx of forgotten knowledge. At that moment, a glint, a reflection of something shiny in the distance, caught the sun before disappearing. Alex noticed the reflection, but dismissed it as his mind was consumed with the newly awakened memories. Harnessing this resurgence of past experiences, Alex quickly took charge, his voice ringing with newfound authority and determination. "We've faced these supernatural threats before. Gather around. I'll share what we've learned." The leaders and survivors huddled together as Alex began to outline defensive strategies and tactics that had proven effective in their previous encounters with the undead, the Lycans, and the Elders. "We've beaten them before. We can beat them again," Alex declared, his words bolstering the spirits of everyone at the outpost. His leadership transformed the atmosphere from despair to resolve, as plans were rapidly made to reinforce their defenses and prepare for the looming threats. As the outpost buzzed into action, fortified by recovered memories and renewed hope, the leaders and survivors worked together, united by their shared past and a determined future. The battle was far from over, but with their restored knowledge and collective resolve, they were ready to face whatever came their way. Days after their grim realization and rapid preparations, the outpost faced its impending trial. From the lookout, the approaching horde was visible. About 200 undead shambled towards the center camp, their forms grotesque even in the distance. Alex and his team had not wasted the intervening days. The walls of the outpost were now fortified with spikes and barbed wire, designed to snag and hold the undead. Behind these fortified barriers, gaps allowed spearmen to thrust their weapons at any attackers that got too close. Although the outpost possessed a handful of firearms, their limited ammunition meant that these could not be relied upon to turn the tide alone. Amidst the preparations, Marco and Nina had been struck by a sudden burst of inspiration, a plan so clear and fully formed that it seemed as if it had been implanted in their minds. "It just came to us, like someone had sent a message directly into our brains," Marco explained to the group gathered around the makeshift strategy table. Nina laid out their simple, yet potentially effective plan. "We create a diversion, leading the undead away from the outpost and towards a nearby area laden with quicksand." She outlined the terrain on a rough map, pointing to a naturally occurring quicksand pit not far from their location. Marco continued, "We can place dummies just past the quicksand. Dressed up and perhaps even making noise, they would attract the undead. As they mindlessly pursue what they perceive as humans, they'll fall into the quicksand." The idea was met with nods of approval. The quicksand would bog down the undead, and making them easy targets for the outpost defenders. It was a plan that utilized their environment to their advantage, turning a natural feature into a deadly trap. The team quickly set to work, gathering materials to create the dummies. They dressed them in old clothes and set them up to clatter and bang in the wind, simulating human activity. As the undead horde drew closer, the outpost defenders readied themselves. At the designated moment, a small team, led by Alex, made a controlled retreat, firing shots and making noise to draw the undead's attention. Their path was deliberately chosen to lead the undead towards the quicksand trap. As the first of the undead reached the dummies, their decaying feet sank into the soft, deceptive ground. One by one, they became stuck, their movements becoming sluggish as they tried to free themselves from the mire. From a safe distance, the outpost's defenders watched, ready to deal with the trapped undead at their leisure. "This could work," Alex muttered, watching the scene unfold with a mix of hope and anxiety. "If we can keep coming up with plans like this, maybe we really can survive this." As the sun set behind them, casting long shadows over the field of struggling undead, the team at the center camp felt a rare moment of victory in what had seemed like an endless night of despair. With their quick thinking and quicksand trap, they had turned what could have been a devastating assault into a manageable challenge. Now it was just a matter of cleaning up and preparing for the next threat. The atmosphere in the command tent was charged with tension as Serana addressed the human leaders. "We need you to make an assault on the Lycan," she stated firmly. "We have shared our most potent knowledge with you. We have stuck to our end of the bargain. Now it's your turn." Captain Harris, feeling the weight of their newfound alliance, nodded. "Okay, but we will need help. We can't do this alone," he asserted, looking Serana directly in the eyes. "Of course not," Serana replied with a slight smile. She gestured with her hand, and in a swirl of shadows, 10 figures materialized. The shadows then transformed into 10 elders, each exuding an aura of readiness for battle. "I will have my very best warriors accompany you," she added. Captain Harris detailed the plan, his voice steady despite the stakes. "We'll take 10 fighters trained in your trap incantations, along with an assault team of 30 trained fighters. Using the vehicles, we can reach the Lycan stronghold in about 3 days. Captain Knox, ever cautious, intervened with a note of concern. "That will leave the stronghold vulnerable," she pointed out, her brow furrowed. "Yes, but we need to hold up our side of the bargain to show we can be trusted," Captain Harris responded, his decision reflecting both strategy and honor. "Indeed," Serana agreed, her nod affirming the gravity of their joint commitment. With the plan set and the teams assembled, the group of 40, bolstered by the 10 elders, began their preparations. The human fighters checked their equipment and went over the trap incantations once more with their elder counterparts. The elders, for their part, blended in seamlessly, their centuries of combat experience evident in their calm, methodical preparations. As dawn broke, the convoy was ready. The vehicles, loaded with supplies and armed personnel, lined up outside the stronghold. The air was filled with a mix of anticipation and anxiety as they prepared to embark on the critical mission. Captain Harris and Captain Knox reviewed the route and contingencies with their team one last time, ensuring every detail was covered. Finally, the convoy rolled out, the engine's roar slicing through the morning calm as they headed towards the Lycan stronghold. Dust billowed behind them, a tangible sign of their resolve and the grave task ahead. The journey would be perilous, through territories unknown and fraught with potential ambushes, but the Alliance had given them a fighting chance. As the stronghold faded into the distance, those remaining watched the convoy disappear, their thoughts a mixture of hope and fear for what was to come. This mission was not just a tactical assault, it was a test of the fragile trust between former foes, now united against a common threat. Back at the Necromancer's bone stronghold, a furious roar echoed through the chilling corridors. How could they defeat my warriors? They are just meant to be stock, not able to fight back. Something is wrong. Someone is interfering. The Necromancer bellowed, his voice a mix of rage and confusion. The undead around him cowered, sensing the fury of their creator. His suspicion that an unknown force was manipulating the outcomes of his carefully laid plans was growing. At the Alpha's treetop fortress, a different scene of preparation unfolded. Armed with knowledge imparted by Winter, the Alpha was steps ahead of the game. He rallied his pack, preparing them to intercept the incoming assault of elders and humans. His eyes glowed with a fierce determination, the primal leadership commanding respect and readiness among his Lycans. Meanwhile, back in the Dark Castle, Serana appeared before Eldor with an update. The plan is in place. We'll wait for the humans to trap the Lycan, then destroy them both, leaving their stronghold vulnerable for us to feast on, she outlined with a sly grin. Both elders laughed, their mockery of their adversaries echoing off the ancient stone walls, confident in their deception and the chaos it would soon unleash. Elsewhere, in his secluded lab, Winter examined an added modification to his weapon. Done. The time is right. All the pieces are in place, and soon they will have restored the power I need, he murmured to himself, his fingers caressing the intricate device. His thoughts drifted to Mara, his voice softening. We will soon be together again, Mara. His plan was nearing fruition, and his resolve was as strong as the emotions that drove him. As the second part of the series draws to a close, the stage is set for a grand confrontation. The necromancer's doubts grow as he ponders the unseen forces undermining his undead legions. The Alpha, armed with secret knowledge and a deep trust in Winter, prepares his pack for a critical interception that could turn the tides of war. Meanwhile, Elder and Serana, cloaked in treachery, believe themselves to be the puppeteers, unaware that they too are being manipulated. Winter's quiet machinations hint at a larger plan, one that not only aims to reunite him with his beloved Mara, but also promises to shift the balance of power in this supernatural war. As the pieces move into place, the question remains, what will happen when the gods awake? In Part 3, the awakening of the gods threatens to unravel all the plans laid by mortals and immortals alike. As these celestial beings stir from their slumber, the real gump begins. The fabric of reality itself might warp under the weight of their divine presence, challenging every alliance and enmity forged in their absence. Who will rise and who will fall when the gods themselves enter the battlefield? The anticipation for what lies ahead keeps the realms in suspense, with every player holding their breath, waiting for the moment when the heavens themselves might dictate a new order. Awakening of the gods. In the cold, dimly lit confines of his bone fortress, the necromancer stood over an ancient altar, his voice echoing through the cavernous hall as he called out to Necros, the god of the undead. Someone is aiding the humans. They are beginning to fight back, he declared, his tone a mixture of frustration and urgency. The air around him shimmered with dark energy as his plea traveled beyond the mortal realm, directed toward the hidden part of this world, where only gods dared to tread. Deep in this secluded domain, untouched and unseen by any but the divine, the ground trembled subtly, heralding the awakening of powers long dormant. The call from the necromancer reached its intended recipient, stirring Necros from his godly slumber. Around him, the other gods began to awaken, their powers returning, weaving back into the fabric of the realm. The air thickened with ancient magic and the weight of eons. Necros, his form shrouded in a dark mist, accused his fellow gods with a voice that seemed to come from the depths of the earth itself. Nocturna, Listenor, you must be interfering in the game. The humans grow too strong. Nocturna, the vampire god, his presence as silent and still as the night, and Lysanor, the lichen god, whose eyes glimmered with a feral light, both denied any involvement. Nocturna's voice was calm and measured. Our powers are all now connected to maintain this alternate realm. If one of us were to interfere, the others would know instantly. Moreover, we have all just awoken from the godly sleep, a sleep that renews our powers. Lysanor, his tone edged with irritation at the accusation, added, We would have known if one of us had awoken earlier. This means someone, or something else, is interfering in our pact. We are not yet strong enough to leave this location. In response to the tension, Nocturna suggested with a dismissive sneer, Perhaps, Necros, it is not interference, but merely your inability to control your domain. Your undead have always been the weakest on the board. The air between the gods crackled with potential conflict, each deity keenly aware of the delicate balance that held their realm together. Despite their mutual denials, suspicion lingered like a shadow, darkening their council. As they debated their next course of action, it became clear that the balance of power within their crafted world was more precarious than ever. Outside their hidden sanctuary, the world continued its inexorable turn, ignorant of the divine storm brewing in secrecy. The gods, now fully awake, faced not only the challenge of an unknown saboteur, but also the task of reasserting their dominion without tearing their fragile world apart. The game had evolved, and with it, the rules had changed. As the chapter closed, the realm braced for the ripples that would emanate from this divine awakening, signaling the onset of events that could reshape the very foundations of their existence. Converging paths. The dense forest blurred past as the convoy of vehicles raced towards the impending clash with the lichens. The air was thick with tension, each bump in the rough forest path jolting the fighters into a grim reminder of the challenge ahead. Meanwhile, back at the human stronghold, Elder and Sarana had arrived under the guise of offering assistance to defend the fortress while its warriors were absent. Their presence was met with mixed feelings. Commander Harris and Alana greeted their supposed allies with a cautious welcome, their expressions betraying a hint of the suspicion they harbored. The Elder's offer of help was necessary, yet it stirred an undercurrent of distrust at the stronghold. As the vehicles hurtled through the wilderness, Captain Harris and Captain Knox were deep in conversation in the lead vehicle, their voices barely audible over the roar of the engine and the rush of the wind. Are we sure we can trust these elders, vampires, or whatever they call themselves? Captain Knox asked, her brow furrowed with doubt. I hear you, Captain Harris replied, keeping his eyes on the road as he navigated a particularly rough patch. But so far, they have lived up to their end of the bargain and proved to be honest so far. His voice held a note of reluctant acceptance, even as his grip tightened on the steering wheel. Despite Harris's words, Captain Knox couldn't shake a deep-seated unease. Something doesn't feel right, she muttered more to herself than to Harris, her gaze fixed on the dense trees that loomed on either side of the path. Her instincts, honed over years of combat, warned her of the complexity of their situation, where allies could be as dangerous as enemies. The team's nervousness was palpable. Each member of the convoy was acutely aware of the power and ferocity of the lichens they were about to confront. whispers and restless movements rippled through the ranks as they neared their destination. Weapons were checked and rechecked, and last-minute plans were quietly discussed, each soldier grappling with their own fears and resolve. As the convoy neared the anticipated location of the Lycan confrontation, the tension peaked. The fighters braced themselves, knowing that the next few hours could be decisive not only for their mission, but for the future of the human stronghold. In their hearts, doubts about their elders' allies mingled with the adrenaline of impending battle, creating a volatile mix of fear and determination. Meanwhile, back at the stronghold, Elder and Serana moved with calculated grace, ostensibly setting up defenses, but also exchanging covert glances that spoke of other, unspoken plans. Their smooth assurances and calm demeanor did little to completely ease the concerns of Commander Harris and Elena, who watched their every move with wary eyes. As the chapter closed, the inevitable convergence of forces, human, elder, and Lycan, loomed large, promising a confrontation that would test loyalties, challenge old fears, and potentially reshape alliances. The road ahead was fraught with peril, and every participant, knowingly or not, was about to face their deepest trials. The unveiling of truths. Up ahead, the convoy could see the terrifying Lycans racing toward them. Captain Knox's voice trembled with fear. "We're supposed to fight them." The sight of the Lycans, terrifying, powerful, and primal, sent a chill through even the most seasoned fighters. The convoy quickly maneuvered into a defensive position, using the vehicles as makeshift barriers. The 10 elders held back at a distance, their eyes cold and calculating, waiting for the right moment to strike at both the Lycans and the humans. Just as the violent clash seemed inevitable, a strange stillness enveloped the battlefield. Everything and everyone, Lycans, elders, and humans, seemed frozen in time, a surreal pause in the midst of chaos. Captain Harris and Captain Knox, however, remained unaffected, able to move and speak amidst the eerie stillness. "What's happening?" Captain Harris exclaimed, looking around in confusion. "Winter," said Captain Knox, her voice a mix of realization and bewilderment. "Wait, how did I know this? My mind, it's all coming back. We don't belong here," she confessed, her memories flooding back with alarming clarity. "Yes, Winter, I know him. I remember Fort Haven. I should be there, not here," Captain Harris added, his own recollections resurfacing. "What the hell is happening?" As they grappled with their returning memories, a figure approached them coolly, Winter himself. "Your minds were erased and given new memories," he explained, stopping a few paces away from the confused captains. "I'm glad you now remember me," he continued, his tone calm yet unmistakably cold. "But I don't have time for chit-chat, so listen well. It's your only hope of survival." Winter's presence was commanding, his every word deliberate. "The gods are using you in a game, and Elder and his elders are using you to destroy the Lycans. When the humans have served their purpose, the elders will destroy them." Winter paused, letting the gravity of his words sink in. "I could just destroy you all and would, but the time for my plan is not quite ready, and this would not fit my purpose," he revealed, hinting at a larger scheme at play. "Understand that in this realm, there can only be one winner." His revelation laid bare the harrowing truth of their existence in this manipulated reality, a game orchestrated by divine beings for their amusement, with the mortal inhabitants as mere pawns. Winter's disclosure not only illuminated the hidden machinations behind their struggles, but also painted a target on the true nature of their adversaries. "Now you must decide what you will do with this knowledge," Winter concluded, his expression unreadable. As he turned to leave, the stillness broke, and time resumed its course, leaving Harris and Knox to digest the enormity of their situation amidst a rapidly escalating conflict. The battlefield was once again alive with the sounds of an imminent clash, yet for Harris and Knox, the fight had taken on a new, more desperate meaning. Turn of the tide. As winter vanished into the distance, the strange suspension of time lifted, and the Lycans, elders, and remaining humans began to stir once again. However, rather than resuming their aggressive advance, the Lycans inexplicably turned and walked away from the battle, their departure leaving a palpable sense of confusion in the air. Amidst this unexpected turn of events, Captain Harris and Captain Knox noticed something peculiar at their feet. Two strange tubes left behind. Captain Knox, driven by a mix of curiosity and urgency, grabbed one of the tubes. "It can't be," she murmured, recognizing the design as one of Winter's creations. As the Elders' fighters advanced, their confusion over the Lycans' retreat turned into suspicion towards the humans. "What is this? You betrayed us. For this, you will die," they shouted, fury coloring their words as they readied themselves to attack the human convoy. They were confident in their superiority, believing the humans stood no chance against them. But just at that critical moment, Captain Knox twisted the tube she held. Instantly, an extremely bright light emitted from it, casting ultraviolet and infrared rays across the electromagnetic spectrum. The effect was immediate and painful for the Elders. They recoiled as the light burned their pale skin. With cries of agony, they quickly vanished into the shadows, seeking refuge from the searing brightness. Captain Harris, watching the retreat of the Elders, felt a mix of relief and impending dread. They will reach the stronghold and inform the other Elders of this day. "The stronghold is doomed," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of their predicament. "Maybe not," replied Knox, her tone suggesting a hint of a plan or hope yet disclosed. She looked down at the other tube by her feet, considering their next move. Knox's quick thinking with the light tube had bought them a momentary advantage, but she knew it was just a temporary reprieve. They needed a more permanent solution to protect the stronghold and counter the Elders' treachery. As they regrouped with the remaining human fighters, Captain Knox shared her thoughts on leveraging Winter's technology further. "Winter equipped us for a reason. These aren't just defensive tools. They're a part of a bigger strategy. We need to figure out exactly what Winter planned for us, and fast. Determined to unravel the mystery of Winter's devices and to formulate a plan robust enough to protect their home, Captain Harris and Captain Knox led their team back towards the stronghold. They were resolved to prepare for what they knew would be an inevitable counterattack from the Elders. The journey back was tense, with each member of the convoy acutely aware that the true battle for their survival was just beginning. Betrayal and retaliation. Back at the human stronghold, the aftermath of the battlefield confrontation had sent ripples of anticipation and dread through its walls. The 10 Elders, harnessing their supernatural speed, moved from shadow to shadow, arriving back at the stronghold in mere moments. A stark contrast to the days it would take Captain Knox and Harris to return. Upon their return, the Elders quickly convened with Elder and Sarana, whispering urgently about the betrayal they had experienced. The two leaders listened intently, their expressions darkening with each word. The Elders recounted how the humans had used a weapon that emitted a painful, burning light, forcing them to retreat. With a new resolve, hardened by betrayal, Elder and Sarana approached Commander Harris and Eleanor, their faces etched with contempt. Well, it seems our little alliance is over, Eldur declared coldly, his voice barely containing his fury. Sarana added with disdain, "Good. I couldn't stand being around these animals any longer." As the elders prepared to attack, believing the humans to be defenseless and caught off guard, Elena swiftly pulled out a tube similar to the ones used in the battlefield. With a quick twist, the tube emitted a blinding light that seared the attacking elders. Elder, caught directly in the light's path, screamed in agony. "This is not over," he howled as he disappeared into the shadows, the pain driving him back. In the sudden calm that followed the thwarted attack, Elena and Commander Harris exchanged looks of realization and relief. Our memories just flooded back, and a thought to use these weapons against the elders, Commander Harris murmured, piecing together the events that had just unfolded. Winter, Elena said, the name carrying a weight of newfound understanding and gratitude. They realized that Winter had not only provided them with a means of defending themselves, but also planted the seeds for them to remember their past and see through the elders' deceptions. Now aware of the elders' true intentions and equipped with the means to defend themselves, Elena and Commander Harris quickly organized the stronghold's defenses. They distributed the remaining light-emitting tubes among their forces, briefing everyone on their operation and effectiveness. The stronghold, once vulnerable and on the brink of subjugation, was now a fortified bastion ready to withstand the darkness that sought to engulf it. As they prepared for what they knew would be a prolonged conflict, Commander Harris addressed his people, his voice resolute and inspiring. They thought they could use us as pawns in their cruel games. They were wrong. We stand together, not just to survive, but to fight back. The stronghold rallied behind their leaders, their spirits lifted by the revelation of their strength and the return of their memories. The fight for survival had evolved into a battle for retribution and freedom, and they were ready to meet it head-on, with Winter's mysterious aid as their secret weapon. Within the shadowed confines of Eldur's dark castle, a sense of urgency gripped the air. Frustrated by the recent failures and the unexpected resistance from the humans, Eldur made a desperate plea to Nocturna, the vampire god. "Nocturna, hear my call," he intoned into the darkness. "The one called Winter is here, and he is interfering in the challenge. You must stop him." In the secluded sanctuary of the gods, Nocturna relayed Eldur's message to the other gods. The chamber, a convergence of divine energy, pulsed with a heightened sense of alert. "It seems we have an intruder in our game," Nocturna announced gravely. "It is he who has been meddling with the challenge." Necros, god of the undead, responded with a growl that resonated through the ethereal space. "Then we will end him." His voice echoed with the finality of death, a promise of retribution for the disruption caused in their divine game. Lysano, the lichen god, weighed in with a more strategic approach. "We will need to open this sanctuary in order to reach out and find him," he proposed, his eyes glinting with the anticipation of the hunt. "Let it be so," agreed Nocturna, decisively. With a collective nod, the gods began to summon their powers, preparing to venture out from their sanctum in search of Winter. The sanctuary, usually a place of rest and power renewal, now buzzed with the energy of impending action. Gathering at the center of the sanctuary, the gods joined hands, forming a circle. Their combined energies sparked and crackled, creating a vortex of divine power above them. The air shimmered as if reality itself was bending, the power to breach their confinement growing stronger with each passing second. Visual manifestations of their powers appeared. Nocturna's energy manifested as a dark mist, swirling with the essence of night. Necros's power looked like tendrils of shadow and decay, creeping along the floor, while Lysanor's energy pulsated with the primal force of the wild, his aura radiating a golden hue. As the energies intertwined, a portal began to form, its edges sharp with the promise of passage to the realms beyond their divine enclosure. The gods focused intensely, their faces etched with concentration and the burden of their immortal responsibilities. This portal was their gateway to restoring order and to the game they had set in motion, a game now threatened by Winter's unseen hand. Once we step through this portal, our presence will be felt across the realm, Nocturna cautioned, his voice a mere whisper against the growing power around them. We must be swift and decisive. Agreed, Lysanor and Necros said in unison, their voices blending with the humming energy of the portal. With a final surge of power, the portal stabilized, glowing with a fierce, otherworldly light. One by one, the gods stepped through, disappearing from their sanctuary to appear in the world where Winter's influence had begun to tilt the balance of their carefully constructed game. They were determined to confront Winter, to end his interference, and to reclaim the control that was rightfully theirs in the cosmic order of their creation. The hunt for Winter had begun, and with it, a new chapter in their eternal saga of power and manipulation. The confrontation. As the gods emerged into the realm, they found themselves not in a hidden corner or upon a battlefield, but facing Winter, who was sitting calmly, almost as if he had been expecting them. "Impressive," he murmured softly as he appraised the trio before him. The three gods, Nocturna, Necros, and Lysanor, stared at Winter, bewildered by his calm demeanor and his choice to confront them directly rather than fleeing. It was an anomaly they had not anticipated. Winter, sensing their confusion, decided to enlighten them. "You may find it intriguing, but you have been under my control this entire time," he began, his voice even and devoid of any fear. "Every action you have taken was at my will." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in before continuing. "I need your power for a personal reason." This revelation only stoked the flames of their fury. Enraged by his audacity, Necros unleashed tendrils of godly energy towards Winter, intending to obliterate the audacious mortal. However, Winter merely raised his hand, revealing new modifications in his glove that effortlessly cancelled out the attack. "Predictable," he commented dryly. Not to be outdone, Nocturna then shot out dark, powerful supernatural shadows towards Winter, who countered once again with an almost bored efficiency. "I have every piece of data needed to defend against anything you can throw at me," Winter declared mockingly. Realizing that individual attacks were futile, the three gods united their powers. Lysanor, the most pragmatic of the trio, stated grimly, "Winter's power has grown too much and must be stopped." They then unleashed a massive wave of combined energy, their most powerful attack aimed at overwhelming Winter's defenses. At first, Winter managed to shield himself from the onslaught, his technology absorbing the brunt of the attack, but as the god's power intensified, even his advanced modifications began to falter. "It's too powerful. My weapon cannot cope. It's failing," Winter grunted, struggling against the mounting energy. Despite the overwhelming pain, Winter's resolve did not waver. "What is pain to one like me? My mind can shut off the pain. Mara, I will not fail," he gasped out, the words gaping his lips. With those final words, Winter disintegrated under the relentless assault, the energy seemingly causing him to vanish from existence. The gods watched, their expressions a mix of relief and exhaustion. He was indeed powerful, but our three powers combined were enough to destroy him, Lysanor remarked solemnly. Yet the victory was bittersweet. "But it has weakened us. We must now return to our sanctuary and regain our strength, Nocturna added, the toll of their exertion evident in his voice. With winter seemingly eradicated, the gods retreated, their forms fading as they returned to their divine sanctuary to recover. The battle for the realm could now continue without the interference of winter's machinations, restoring the original balance the gods had intended for their grand game. The mortal players would once again be left to their own devices under the watchful eyes of the gods, who would need to recuperate from their unexpected and unprecedented challenge. Rifts in reality. As the gods retreated to their sanctuary, a new disturbance manifested in the realm. Across the sky, small fissures appeared, visible to all who dared to look upwards. These fractures in the sky seemed to pulse and widen, as if the very fabric of the realm was tearing, drained by an unseen force. The inhabitants of the realm, from the bustling human strongholds to the shadowy enclaves of the elders, stared up in horror and disbelief. Whispers of fear and theories of impending doom spread like wildfire among them as they speculated on the cause and consequence of such a phenomenon. Only the Lycans seemed undisturbed by the celestial anomalies. The Alpha, in particular, remained stoic and composed. With a solemn grace, he gazed skyward and let out a long, resonant howl. The sound carried across the lands, filled with a profound sense of mourning and understanding. Had he sensed winter's passing, or did the Alpha harbour some pre-knowledge of something far deeper, some plan embedded deep within him by winter himself? The howl seemed to echo not just through the forests and hills, but through the very essence of the realm, leaving many to wonder about the depth of the Alpha's insight and connection to the forces at play. The veil thins. Is winter truly gone, his essence dissolved under the god's wrath, or does some part of him linger, woven into the very anomalies now appearing in the sky? With the gods weakened and retreating to their sanctum to recover, will they continue to interfere in the realm, or have they expended too much to manipulate further? Now that the humans have regained their memories, they stand at a crossroads, filled with old knowledge and new challenges. Can they defend themselves against the supernatural forces that once overbore them, or will the returning memories empower them to forge a new path of resistance and independence? And what of the Alpha, whose enigmatic behavior suggests a deeper understanding of the unfolding events? Does he hold the key to unraveling the mystery of winter's plans and the fissures now splitting their sky? Find out in the upcoming episode of Crimson Dawn, Episode 4. Join us as we delve deeper into a world where the veil between realms thins, and every creature, mortal and divine, must choose their role in the epic saga that decides the fate of their world. Stay tuned and prepare for revelations that will challenge the very foundation of what you know about power, loyalty, and destiny in the Crimson Dawn.